Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 75. I'm Enigmas and today the Manta assault hover vessel build, of course, finally, just the top today. I've been looking forward to working in this particular area of the ship because I had all these ideas that I wanted to kind of unload. But I wanted to be kind of methodical in the way that we were building, starting from the bottom and then the back and then start working towards the front. So now that we're actually here, it's a really fun place to be. Whenever we're looking at things, it seems, people showing off their ships, whether it's a gallery on Reddit or the workshop or whatever, everyone's trying to show the ship from slightly above and showing the top, the front, and a side. And that's the profile that we usually get, because that's where all the interesting stuff tends to get put. So in this case, got an idea of some of the things that I want to put into place, but I've also given myself tons of room to just kind of do whatever, because it's a very intricate sort of set of curves and angles. I mentioned this in the last episode. I don't necessarily want just kind of a saucer section from a Star Trek kind of ship. I want something that's got its own sort of individual character and characteristics. So in order to do that, I wanted to make sure that I gave myself plenty of leeway to kind of roll with whatever seemed like it might be a good idea at the time and go with it from there. You can see here, I decided one thing is that given the size of what we were working with, it would be probably a good idea to at least get some sort of a profile going here. And you can see we just finished it off. A very simple, very straightforward kind of a shape. It's just bending around from the front and then swooping straight back along the sides. And then from here, it's much easier to kind of get a feel for how we're going to fill in the gaps and make various different things happen. Realistically speaking, there's always that one point where there's just a little bit left, and that's where all the really tricky transitions happen. So for this part here, working around kind of a little bit the side, coming around like this, very familiar angles, very familiar kind of shapes that we're working with here, so it's not especially difficult. But we still will encounter certain things that, we have to be a little bit creative in our approach and maybe attempt them a few times before we're satisfied with what we end up with. Now, this episode is going to run a little bit longer than normal, and that's because there wasn't really a good spot to kind of cut around the 10-minute mark and pick up in the next episode. I felt like I would either have to have the episode extra short and not cut in the middle of the one transition area that you'll see, or run it a little bit long so that you can see the entire process, getting it all roughed in, and then in the next episode we'll continue on with the sides and all these front details that I have in mind, and then we'll go back basically fairly methodically throughout the entire ship, do another pass over everything that I'm not 100% satisfied with, and we'll see how it goes from there. So just so you know, I do try to keep these around the 10-minute mark just so that it's really approachable. It's not as easy to get overwhelmed by the duration given the amount of stuff that's going on. If you find it too long, let me know. If you find it too short, let me know. But so far, I haven't really had any complaints about the duration for the 10-minute episode. Some people like the longer ones just because it's a little bit more entertaining, but if I started doing those, I think people would be like, it's too much. It's too much all at once to do like 20 minutes of this stuff. So now I've got some really weird things coming together. We're already at that spot where we have to make some decisions about how we want to proceed. What sort of oddities and aberrations in the design we're willing to accept in the form of strange angles and things sticking up here and there that we don't necessarily want. And if we just can't live with it, we have to figure out what we can do to fix it. So someone did point out in the comment section of a fairly recent video that it's kind of like a big jigsaw puzzle. It is, but the nice thing about it is you get to pick the picture. You can change the picture whenever you want. So it's a good way of looking at it, as long as we also understand that there is an element of freedom to it that you don't normally get with your average jigsaw puzzle, I guess. And now I'm kind of taking a bit of a shortcut here and just sort of pulling all of this stuff forward. It's going to save a bunch of time. It's going to save a bunch of work in the design phase. And again, because we are really just roughing things in, if I come up with something that I want to do in that space later, then I'll do that. One of the things that I'm trying to keep in mind, specifically at this point, and everything that we're going to be doing from this point towards the back of the ship, is that the top of the ship is where I tend to put most of the guns. And that's just because the nature of the turret means we get 360 degree coverage, and the only place that doesn't necessarily have coverage is the underside of the ship. I'm not saying that all of the guns are going to be on the top, but most of them are. And when we're talking about the guns for a hover vessel, we're talking about, I think, just off the top of my head, missile launchers, plasma turrets, minigun turrets, and artillery. I usually only put one artillery gun on these kinds of ships because I use it manually for picking off turrets from points of interest. If you've been following the series, you know that that's sort of the standard approach, is using a hover vessel with an artillery turret. If you had other turrets on the ship, other artillery turrets, either they're not going to be used because you've got them turned off and you can only manually control one at a time, or you're going to have them turned on and you're going to go through a lot of artillery ammunition on things that don't really need to use artillery ammunition in order to destroy them. So that's the one where I choose to use only one of the 4 that we're allowed to use, and then the rest we just use everything that we possibly can. And that's, to me, my preferred way of going about it. Is there's no kill like overkill, and if we have access to it, we might as well use it. And we've got here a bit of a detail that I hadn't anticipated, I hadn't planned. It wasn't in the vision that I had for the overall shape, where it just flares out from the side a little bit. And that's another example of something that the idea came to me as I was building. I like the way it looks. It made it a lot easier to manage that particular area of the transitions. Everything is starting to come together now, that one little spot. And for the time being, I'm okay with it. So we'll roll with it. We'll see how it goes. But for now, this spot here is going to be the tricky spot. You can see there's basically a hole in the top. We've got everything done around that hole, and now we have to fill in that hole and account for all of the different angles, curves, elevations that are coming together. It takes a little while, and it's just one of those things. Again, experiment. I play around with it, try different blocks, try different things. There's a lot of times where I'll try something and I know as I'm doing it that I'm probably not going to like it. But I've actually surprised myself on so many occasions in the past, trying something that I didn't think that I would like and finding a new way of doing things that I actually do like, that I don't use the I don't really like this idea as an excuse to not try it at all. It's more along the lines of, don't waste a lot of time on it, give it a shot, see what it looks like, but don't be afraid to move on right away, I think is a more productive way to look at it. And in this case, this is another example of not only where I'm happy that I have that freedom to make decisions on the fly. I'm not trying to create a specific design or pattern. I'm just trying to create something that I'm happy with, and doing it in a way that's going to differentiate what we're doing with this design from your conventional saucer-shaped dome on the front of a ship. And just in case you missed the last episode, I want to stress, I have nothing against people who build ships from the Star Trek or the Star Wars universe. They're both extremely common. Sometimes the easiest way to dive in and have fun is to start creating things that you're familiar with. So the fact that I'm saying that I don't want it to look like a Star Trek ship shouldn't be taken as a disparaging comment about people who do make them. Just that that's not really what I'm specifically aiming for. And you can see I'm getting there. Realistically speaking, there's not much that I can say about what we're going to do. There's just a few minutes left that you guys can watch and see how this whole thing comes together. It was so close. And you'd think with just that little wee tiny bit left to fill in that we would be nearly done. But it takes a little while before we finally get it to a spot where we're happy enough with it that we can move on. So the next episode is going to be more adding things that we haven't done yet. So the back part of the top of the ship and possibly the sides and the front, those are the 3 areas that we still have to focus on that we haven't touched yet. And then going forward, we're just going to kind of go until it's done with the hull. And then it's just a matter of all the final details. So if you want to be notified about the next and future episodes. As always, you can subscribe to my channel, or you can follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.